Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of SuperFantaFi. This being a show where we talk about TV shows of the supernatural, fantasy, and/or science fictional genre. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about Brea, Season 3, Episode 5. Great episode. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. The penultimate episode of the series. Obviously, I know I'm getting to this extremely late, but here we are. Regardless, we're picking up in the aftermath of last episode, and Gavin's contemplating what he's supposed to do. It's like, right, this microchip is the means of getting Eve back, but he's afraid to make the wrong move because so much is riding on this. Because he's like, if I make the wrong move, like everything, I could end up losing everything. And so he's worried about that. And obviously, it's kind of a nice moment between him and Ty, because Ty hasn't heard from Potter, so it makes you wonder, has Potter been captured too? Because it makes you wonder, because she left on like something for like a couple days, so I don't know if that's like a 10,000 BC situation or whether that's like the base related thing, and she's been removed because maybe they were just trying to put someone else in position they felt might be more malleable, because that kind of maybe plays into like the root of it all, but we'll get to that soon enough. But for Ty, obviously he came back here for Potter. So it ends up being this situation that I'm curious. It's going to be interesting because obviously we won't really know till the series finale, and I don't know if the series finale will even cover it, but we are kind of dealing with an alternate timeline situation. We're dealing with multiple timelines because Ty did go back in time, and he set Sam and Gavin back in 2021 on a different path. So I think because things have changed, that sets them on it depends on how this whole thing is operated. Like, once again, it's like, does that timeline now just disappear, or is it a situation where, like, when this is all said and done and they do manage to find their way back to present day, obviously it becomes a conversation of who stays, who goes, type of situation, but also there's going to be a lot, obviously, in the finale to kind of really answer, so I guess we'll just kind of save that speculation to the very end. But yeah, it's just, there's a lot riding on this. So ultimately they end up getting in contact with the kidnappers, and they have they're like, right, bring us the chip. But even Gavin and Ty thought, oh, it's interesting, they must have eyes on us because they knew we had the chip. It's like, why would they know to contact us now? And just before they could even say oh, we need proof of life about Eve, but before they could even do that, the message was cut, and then lo and behold, who strolls in? Maya, which is so interesting too, because at the same time this is all going down, there was a conversation between Sam and Lucas, and Lucas kind of reveals he thinks there's a traitor at the fort, because it's like, right, they grabbed up Levi and Petra, and then they also ended up finding Scott during all that fire. It's like they knew exactly where they were to find him. It's like, so someone's got to be working with him, because the whole thing is like, obviously he's worried about Scott, which I thought was beautiful. He's like, he's basically my best friend. I'm like, yo, Lucas, man who kind of walked in this kind of with nothing. He had a lot of hatred for his mom, but him and his mom pieced it up. Him and his mom had a great relationship by the end. Still so much history they didn't have a chance to fix things on, but him and Scott are now basically besties, and him and Veronica fell in love, and now they have a child on the way. So it's like, Lucas is one of the people who kind of walked into this situation with less and is walking away with more. Sadly, that situation could involve his mom. Granted, once again, that also depends on how this timey-wimey situation plays out, because that could be something we see potentially undone, depending on how they operate and how they go about this. Some stuff, because that's a death, Mary Beth's death, feel like something they could undo if they wanted to, but once again, it just depends on the resolution to this whole situation, which will determine that. If they're just picking up, hey, we just popped back into 2021, like almost like just when we left because of the sinkhole, then this is all not going to matter. Well, it can't be immediately, because it is kind of interesting. I'm thinking about, because we haven't been post present day sinkhole since season 1, because everything else present day has been everything with Ty was pre sinkhole present day. So, like I said, tangents and all that aside, yeah, I got lost on my diatribe, but It was just more like Sam was worried like, oh, you're gonna storm the base. He's like, I'm not gonna do it. I'm pissed about Scott, but he's like, no, I just want to talk to my mom about the good news and stuff and let her know kind of, it's like, this is the place I go to when I want to calm down and kind of think things through. So, but I was kind of like, okay, well, we know that we know Maya's a bad guy, so luckily we've already got Lucas on the case. So I was like, okay, so but the moment we had Gavin suggest like, oh, we should take a 10-minute break. I'm like, kind of figure stuff out. We'll regroup. I was like, that's interesting. And then Maya follows him out there because the way he was holding, I was like, isn't he? It seemed like he might snap that microchip in half or something. But then she shows up and he's like telling her what he's gonna do, and just that expression on his face when she pulls the gun on him was almost like, you almost expect. I was like, is this a trap? And lo and behold, it is. It's like, how did they figure it out? It's like she overplayed her hand. That just when the message, like the kidnapper stopped communicating, just when they happen to, she just happens to walk in seconds later. It's like, yeah, you overplayed your hand. Being there so like, oh man, I understand you want to give up the microchip. I understand. It's like you would think she would at least weigh the options a little bit more. Like she was giving so much pushback to Gavin being like, him contemplating whether or not to give it over. She was kind of be like, no, it's a simple thing. You get your wife back and everything. It's like you were you saw the prize in front of you and you got a little too antsy. So that ended up being her undoing. Granted, she got away because she has a tracker on her and ended up leading the Ladera base soldiers to their location. Luckily, Elena shows up, which I wasn't expecting that, but I guess it makes a lot of sense. Literally, last episode, you dropped the reveal of half-sister, well, not half-sister, once again, they haven't really dived into that. Maybe given more time, they really would explore that more, but like I said, they didn't even really go into the whole sister situation too much, especially with where their family circumstances are. It's like, none of that was really disclosed. It's like, let's not even worry about it. Like I said, if they had more of the season to explore that, we probably would. But either way, Elena followed Ty through the portal, so through the Aurora, so luckily shows up in time. And she also gives us some really interesting information for when we find out a little bit more about Maya. It's been a while since I talked about the last episode, or it's been a while since the last episodes in general for me. But I think I remember thinking like, okay, once we found out about Maya last episode, I want to say I was like, oh, that's not the real Maya, because we haven't had this Maya and Petra around each other, so most likely the real Maya is someone else, and maybe she's really at the base, and this is just someone from the base pretending to be Maya. It's like, no, this is the actual Maya Schmidt. That is just her. So this is who she really is, which makes you wonder, is Petra even aware of who her mom really is and what her mom's all about? Because she was like, oh, we were running away from the base, which makes you go, is Petra in on the lie too? Probably not. She probably believed her mom or whatever, thought they were really in danger, but I don't know, because now it puts into question, I mean, because Petra did seem genuine, but I don't know what the resolution to that's going to be, because we find out at the military base, it's like, well, where is Petra? Well, she's probably somewhere Maya knows where she is, because she's fine. Maya's a part of all of this, so. But yeah, basically she works for she is that, well, maybe not works for, but is like the head of like a private like security company or whatever that's building the airplanes that's going to make all the time travel stuff possible. And that's where Scott comes into place, because we find out that whatever it is, whatever plants, whatever it is, that it's like a fossil of some sort that Scott talked about in his paper, and that this particular thing is a necessary ingredient for Maya to make time travel possible. Because it seems like this whole thing, it's supposed to be like a kind of off the books operation, so it's like not even many government people would know, like, this is a black ops type of situation, and it seems like Maya's going to sell it to the highest bidder type of thing. It ain't even like she's doing this for the U.S. government. It's like, no, I'm going to make it possible, and whoever wants to buy it can buy it off me. So this is about money in your classic supervillain fashion, It's either money or power. That's all it really comes down to, is what she's doing all this for. Speaking of Scott, we catch up with him, but he's across the cell from Levi, because they're at these jail cells at the base. And but I figured something was up with Levi, because I was like, it's weird the way he was questioning Like, Scott's like, what else was in that paper? Like, is there anything you didn't tell him? I'm like, why would you question it like that? Because he was making it trying to sound like, oh, we could use this to get out of here. But I'm like, it feels like you're pumping him for information more than anything. And lo and behold, we find out, hey, he actually works with the Ladera base, because it turns out that when his wife died, because we never really got into it too much, he did say, like, hey, I was with a bad group is who I mixed up with. It never even correlated. I mean, they included it in the recap at the beginning, but it never even correlated in my head, like, oh yeah, who is this group that Levi worked with? We never bothered finding out. It's like, oh, now we do. Basically, Maya's got like bases and operations like active all over the place, and one of them happens to be here in 10,000 BC. That's how he found out about him, and he used them as a means to an end to get to James to exact his revenge. So, but he reveals himself to Scott, which Scott's like, yeah, like, how can I trust you? The guy that literally, because Levi's doing all of this for redemption. He's like, oh yeah, like, Gavin, your best friend / brother, who you had an affair with his wife. You also came back in time to kill his father, so there's all of that. But for Levi, it's like, I need to make up for all I've done. Not even just for Gavin, for everyone. Because not only did I hurt Gavin in multiple ways, I came back to kind of kill his father, I also made it so that none of you could go home. I took your way home away from all of you too. And so he has to kind of sell it of like, right, we got to make Maya believe you might have told this information to someone else. So he keeps punching him. And I love when it's all said and done, they sold the story to the point that it's like, okay, we'll take him to that holding facility, which I knew Maya was a little suspicious when she was like, you know about that. And Levi's like, yeah, I heard some people talk about it. It's like, yeah, him knowing that information is a little suspicious. But yeah, they'll send Scott there, which I love. Levi like, oh my god, good job, you sold it. Like, yo, that was great. I love Levi's like so pumped about it. Like, oh, good. I mean, that was some great acting. You figured it out. It worked just like we wanted to. Scott's almost looking like, what the fuck are you talking about, dude? Like, I kind of got your signs about the lie, but it's just like, we probably should have planned that a little bit better. But I get it. We were restricted on time, but still, I love. There's a little bit of funniness to that bit, which I thought was so interesting. We also have, going back a little bit with the whole traitor situation, I loved how they handled that. It took me a little bit to figure out who it was, because I was like, who is it? Because it was interesting where we had Veronica stumble across like a secret panel in the floor for like a radio to contact the base. So it's like, all right, someone in the village. It isn't just Maya. There's someone else in the village, someone from the fort working with them. So you're like, who is it? So Veronica's going to figure that out. She's at the council meeting. Immediately you think it's the dude that's like, yo, we need to get rid of like the people from the clearing. Like, yeah, they might have helped us with the fire and so on and so forth, but it's still a situation of they're drawing more attention to us. But then Veronica brings out the case, shows it off to everyone, and then Ruth had a weird expression. You're like, wait, Ruth? Because even Veronica was almost like, no, it can't be. I was like, I guess it makes sense, because I was like, home dude who's so against the people at the clearing, you're like, well, it's obviously got to be him, right? But what would Ruth benefit from the, because obviously she wants them to stick around, so it's like, what would she benefit from this? I was like, that doesn't make any sense. And then the other side of the thing, it wasn't until you had Layla and Izzy talking about the future, because, she felt, Layla felt lost for a while, and she was so lost that she never really gave too much thought about her future and her place and everything in the world. It's not until she met Izzy, who talked a bit more about her home, and then she's like, right, I got something to show you. And you're like, interesting. And then she's like, yeah, it's going to change things. I was like, what is this about? And then they just happened to walk past where the soldiers were. I was like, oh my god, you're the traitor, aren't you? I was like, that's why Ruth had the expression on her face. It's because she figured out the person that had to be responsible was her daughter. It's like, outside of the council members, she's probably noticed, like, right, she's probably caught Layla in the council house a couple times. Like, it's right, her mom's on the council, her mom's running things right now, so it wouldn't be too strange for her to be out and about. But like, she's probably noticed some differences in Layla's behavior, and it's like, that's where she probably figured out, like, oh, Layla, I probably caught her in here a couple times wondering what she was up to. And, ultimately later on when Lucas and Veronica catch up to her, like, Veronica's able to see through it, like, right, you're protecting someone, and it ends up being Layla. But especially when she was because you could tell Layla didn't think things were going to go down the way it did when they found those dead soldiers. She was almost like, well, we'll follow them to your dad because like maybe they could have been here or whatever. But we find out like, oh, she thought there was going to be a double Aurora there somewhere that was going to take her and Izzy to a different time, which Izzy's like, whoa. You thought we were just going to bail? We have friends and family here. And Layla's like, no, it's fine. It's like, she's so wants so much more from her life than what's here. It's like, because she even said it herself, she was so afraid of losing people that she loves that it kind of petrified her instead of moving on with her life. And now she found Izzy. It's like, well, you gave me the courage and the feeling that I can move on with my life and it's okay to want to move forward. It is kind of a selfish situation, but it's like when it comes to your own happiness, you're willing to do whatever. It's like, right, I found someone I can be with. Like, I don't know if she gave too much thought about what time they would go back to. Obviously, maybe she thought maybe we go back to where Izzy's originally from, since Izzy's talked about where she's from, but still. The fact that she thought Izzy would just be on board with that, just leave everything behind, was so much. It's like my mom, my dad, my brother being in a situation he's in 65. So there's a lot there. Because in her mind, like, Layla didn't think anything. It's like, right, Maya promised no one would get hurt. It's like, well, Maya's a habitual liar. She's lied to everyone. It does make you wonder how long they've been in contact then. Well, probably ever since she showed up in the villages. So that was like episode 3 when she got introduced. So she's probably been working with her ever since then. Maybe sometime after, or maybe in between episode. Because once again, it was like Petra and Levi Levi getting grabbed was more of an extraction, as he even described it. So it was more so about what activities they were up to and stuff like that was mainly what that was about. We also dive a little bit into Elena and Gavin's circumstances, because we never got too much of it last episode, but it turns out she kind of abandoned him. Like, after they stole the microchip, for whatever reason, her and Gavin were going to disappear with Eve and the kids, and they were going to start over in, like, Mexico or something like that. But for whatever reason, Gavin just turned his back on her. And I don't know if it has to deal with, like, his repressed memories or something. What happened? I mean, to be fair, it's like I wasn't the best person. No one could rely on me at that time, So, and even the Gavin she met last episode is different from the Gavin, because that Gavin's taken steps to become a better person, obviously, and be who Gavin actually is. But this Gavin is taking those steps, and he's been through all 3 seasons of the show, versus that Gavin who hasn't even experienced any of those. That Gavin pre-existed those did. So it's also that journey of, like, it's that whole thing of just kind of like, oh, like, look how these different events can send you on a similar path, but the end result could be vastly different. That Gavin she met in episode 4 is, the one she met in episode 4 is different from the one that from this Gavin, like I said, who's going through everything. Just kind of an interesting thing of just, kind of that, how obviously your experience shape you. And it's like I said, it makes Gavin, both experiences have made Gavin more of who he was before the drinking, before he thought he was losing his mind. But the end result, like I said, still varied from the two. But yeah, like for her, she took the brunt of, she's the one that stole the chip, and none of that fell back on Gavin. Gavin had his entire family to support him, where she was on her own, especially because Gavin had made a promise of, like, right, I'll get to meet Eve, I'll get to meet my niece and nephew, but that was all kind of taken away from her. So it is that thing of, she was kind of on her own for so long, and it felt like nice to feel like, hey, I have a family again. And for Gavin to kind of bail on her like that, it was a lot. And even she was like, yeah, I gave you another chance, and you disappointed me again. Once again, to be fair, that was that Gavin versus this Gavin, but this Gavin would still made the same decision that Gavin from episode 4 would have made too, just from present day, just because, like I said, at their core, they are the good person that Gavin is at his heart, the guy who tries to do the right thing, who wants to do the right thing. Surviving a large crocodile or alligator, whichever one it may be, trying to kill her, did a little bit to kind of help push that relationship along, because Gavin is like, right, you are my sister. I've let you down before. You've done a lot for me, so why wouldn't I do the same thing for you? Because at the end of the day, you are my sister. You are family. So when the time comes, I'm gonna back you up. But circling over to Levi and Scott, they're making their way to that holding facility, and it turns out that's where Eve is. That's why Levi went back to work with these people, because he figured this would be his best opportunity to find out who has Eve. He's been looking for her the entire time, so it's all worked together. It's him using the mistakes he made to try it. Well, this mistake he made to try and rectify the other mistakes he's made and try to make things good, make up for a lot of there's a lot of wrong he's done. But the moment he was telling Izzy, like, next time you see me, I'm gonna be with your dad. He's gonna be fine. I was like, oh, that was a death flag, wasn't it? And lo and behold, it was. It sucks. Like, it's like, of course, like, after everything, it's like there's almost like obviously the poeticness of, right, after kind of doing the wrong thing but trying everything he can to make up to Gavin for everything, for Izzy, to Josh, like how he screwed up in a lot of ways, and ultimately he found out where Eve was and he let Gavin know. And it's just like, he was like, I'm sorry for everything, but Gavin's like, you are my brother. It's like, brothers till the end. He's like, yeah, brothers till the end. And Levi dies. It's like, damn, that sucks. And Izzy's there, and it's heartbreaking, when obviously, like, Josh is unaware of all of this, obviously, in 65, and Eve is too, and it's just, right, like I said, he was a good guy in the end. He made some mistakes along the way, but he tried to rectify them, and he died doing the right thing, protecting his best friend / brother and his family, because Izzy, Josh, and Eve are just as much family to him, like Gavin is, and it sucks. Won't lie to you, got super choked up about it too, especially him dying. I'm like, yeah, that got me. I had to fight back the tears. We ultimately end up finding out that the facility that Eve is at isn't here in 10,000 BC. In fact, it's in 65. So it's like, hey, everything kind of works out in the end, because it turns out all roads lead back to 65. Which this kind of leads into a larger conversation I've had previously of, I don't know if, like, the writers went into this knowing that they were only going to have 6 episodes to wrap everything up, or were they in the process of wrapping everything up in a normal length enough of a season, but then got, like, how much stuff did they have to cut and rework because they learned it was only 6 episodes, or did they go into it expressly knowing they'd only have 6 episodes? And even amongst those 6 episodes, there's probably stuff they decide, like, oh, we're going to have to cut that. It makes you wonder how, not even just the writing process, even the filming process, there might be stuff that they filmed that, like, oh, we got to cut it for time. There's just not enough time. Like, I brought up, like, I think I brought this up in a previous episode of, like, well, Josh and Riley, like, ever since and I think that was, like, at the beginning of the season, right? It was the beginning of the season. They were going the entire season. Someone had kind of thrown out a speculation a while back of why they thought Eve wasn't really in this season much, so it's interesting, like, how much of that stuff was just cut for, like, oh, we're retooling it this way, or was there specific reasonings? I don't know. I haven't looked into it too much, but it still all works out, which makes me wonder, since Josh and Riley ended up in 65, that most likely means that they were captured too. And Riley got medical attention, but they're both being held prisoner. So that's probably why they never cut. Like, that could be like your story workaround of why we never caught up with Josh and Riley. Maybe if it was any other season, like if the season was like normal length, maybe we would have. But it kind of keep the secret of, well, what's going on with them? Like, because I had brought it up previously, we already kind of got them in the 80s last season. So would we get more like time travel adventures with them off on their own? But it's like, if they were in the same place Eve's at, that means they were most likely locked up too. So it's about getting there and shutting this whole thing down. Most of the group is going. It's Sam, Elena, and Ty and Izzy. And Scott staying behind. I guess that kind of makes... I'd assume red, because blue is connected to, like, is what connects 10,000 BC to present day. So I don't think that blue one would go anywhere different. I think it just would send them back to where Ty was in episodes like 3 and 4. But either way, hell of a way to end off the penultimate episode. It's actually interesting to know too, like because these weren't back-to-back episodes when they aired. Like they did air a week apart. So obviously the next episode is the series finale. Once again, I know I'm late to getting to it, but my biggest question is like I'm so curious to see how they resolve the timey-wiminess of it. Like I said, because of the events of episode 4 and all that stuff with Ty's story while he was in present day, it kind of created an alternate timeline that still would end up with the whole sinkhole situation, but maybe things would play out different, or the timelines end up merging. Like that's why I'm like, will the group like end up like back before the sinkhole, but they have all their memories and stuff, and they've kept all their experiences, but a lot of people they might have lost along the way are still here. So it's like, does that mean Levi's still alive, or or Mary Beth type of situation, or is it just going to be a thing of, yeah, just as soon as the sinkhole open, they're going to pop up post that, even though like there was timeline stuff post the sinkhole. There's questions like that. Like I said, we have not focused on present day post the sinkhole since season 1, so I'm curious to see how that all like lines up with the timey-wiminess of where our heroes land. Because there's no way you're going to do a thing of making it so none of this happens. So because then you undo all the growth and everything that's kind of happened. Like I said, the question of who stays and who goes. Like obviously, Izzy's going to go back home, even with things being what they are between her and Layla, but then there's also, Ty has no reason to go back. It's like Pata is here, so, and I brought up too, I can only assume we haven't seen her because she's actually in the prison as well, so it's going to be interesting to ultimately see where the series finale takes us with all of this, how the series comes to an end, how this all gets wrapped up, like I said, what the resolution actually ends up being. We'll ultimately have to wait and see. But really, that's all I wanted to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.